My name is Tessa Brennan, and I'm 32 years old. 2 weeks before my mother's 60th birthday party, my sister called to tell me I wasn't on the guest list. Not because we'd fought, not because I'd missed a holiday or forgotten a card, because my husband had passed, and in her words, a widow at the table brings the whole mood down. She said it like she was doing me a favor. She said, Mom agreed. I'm a hospice nurse. I sit with people in the last hours of their lives. I hold hands that are letting go. I've washed bodies, written death certificates, told children their grandfather isn't going to wake up. My sister Bernadette runs a boutique event planning company in Scottsdale that does pink balloon arches and gender reveals and $40,000 weddings for people who met on yachts. She wears white in the desert and never sweats. She talks about curating experiences. When she called that Tuesday night, I was still in my scrubs. I'd just driven home from a 12-hour shift where I'd held a 91-year-old woman named, well, it doesn't matter what her name was. I held her hand while she died and her family wasn't there, and I sang to her because no one else would. I walked in my door, dropped my keys in the dish by the entry, and my phone lit up with Bernadette's name. I almost didn't answer. We talked maybe once a month, and even then it was short. Hey, Bernie. Tess. Her voice had that careful brightness she used when she was about to hand you something sharp. So, Mom's party. I've been doing the seating and the flow, you know how it is. I didn't say anything. I set my keys down. I was so tired my eyes were burning. It's going to be a really elevated evening, she said. Champagne, a string trio, the works. And Tess, I love you, but I think it might be better if you sat this one out. I waited. There's a thing you learn in hospice. You let the silence do the work. People fill it eventually. It's just, she went on, everyone's going to be in such a celebratory mood, and you've been through so much this year with Daniel, and I don't want anyone feeling like they have to tiptoe. You understand, it's about protecting the energy of the night. For Mom? For Mom, I repeated. She agrees, by the way. I ran it by her. She thinks it's for the best, too. I remember looking at the dish by my door. Daniel's spare key was still in it. He'd been gone 14 months and I still couldn't take his key out of that dish. I remember thinking very clearly that I was too tired to cry and too tired to fight, and that there was nothing to say that would land anyway. I understand, I said. And I hung up. Here's the thing about being told you bring the mood down. It doesn't surprise you the way you'd think. It confirms something you've suspected for a long time. In my family, I'd always been the one things happened to, never the one things were celebrated for. Let me back up. We grew up in Mesa, 2 girls 2 years apart. Our father left when I was 9 and Bernadette was 11, and our mother raised us on a dental hygienist's salary and a lot of pride. She wanted things for us. Specifically, she wanted things that looked like things. A nice car in the driveway. A daughter who married a man with a good last name. A life she could describe to the women at church without flinching. Bernadette delivered. She married Grant, who sells commercial real estate and owns a boat he keeps in San Diego, even though they live in Arizona. She had 2 beautiful kids who do competitive cheer. She posts photos of her kitchen renovation. My mother glows when she talks about Bernadette. You can see it physically change her face. And me? I went to nursing school. I told my mother at the kitchen table that I wanted to do hospice, specifically end-of-life care, and she looked at me like I'd told her I wanted to dig graves. Why would you want to be around death all day? She said. You're so pretty, Tessa. You could do anything. As if being around dying people meant I'd failed at being pretty. As if comfort wasn't a calling. She never asked about my work after that. Not really. For 10 years, every Sunday call, she asked Bernadette about the boat, the kids' tournaments, the renovation. She asked me, how's the hospital? I'd correct her. It's hospice, Mom. I work for a hospice agency. We go to people's homes. And she'd say, right, and pivot to whether Bernie had heard back about the lake house rental. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was a high school chemistry teacher with crooked glasses and a laugh, too big for his body. He coached the robotics team. He cried at movies. He made me feel, for the first time in my life, like I was somebody's main event. My mother thought he was fine. A teacher's salary didn't impress her, but she liked that I was married. It tidied me up. Daniel died of a glioblastoma 14 months before that phone call. Brain tumor. 11 months from diagnosis to the end, I nursed him myself at home because that's what I know how to do, and it's the cruelest skill set in the world to have to use on your own husband. I knew what every stage meant before it came. I knew when we were in the last week. I knew the morning of the last day. My family came to the funeral. My mother wore black and cried prettily and told everyone how strong I was. And then, I swear to God, within a month, it was like Daniel had never existed. Nobody asked how I was. Bernadette sent a fruit basket. My mother started asking again, "So, how's the hospital?" So no, when Bernie told me I'd bring the mood down at Mom's party, it didn't shock me. It just clarified. What none of them knew I had never told a single one of them, was that for the last 3 years, I hadn't just been a nurse going from house to house. I'd built something. It started small, the way these things do. After Daniel, I couldn't sleep. Grief does that. So at 2 in the morning, I'd write. I wrote about the patients I'd sat with, the things dying people say at the end, the wild, beautiful, ordinary wisdom that comes out of someone in their final week. Not their names, never their names. I changed every detail, protected every family, but the truth of it, what it's actually like to be there at the threshold, what people regret, what they don't, what they reach for. I started a little anonymous blog. No photo, no name, just a nurse writing in the dark. I called it The Last Good Hours. I figured maybe 20 people would read it. By the end of the first year, it was 40,000 a month. By the second year, a publisher in New York found it. They wanted a book. I wrote it at night, the same way I'd written everything else, in the hours when the rest of the world was asleep and I was wide awake and missing my husband. I poured Daniel into it without ever naming him. I poured every patient who taught me how to die well and therefore how to live. The book came out that spring under a pen name because I didn't want my patients' families to ever feel exposed, and because, honestly, I didn't want my mother to read it and make it about her. It was called The Last Good Hours, same as the blog. It sold and then it sold more. Then it hit a list I won't pretend I'd ever expected to be on. A morning show called. I did the interview with my back to the camera, voice only. An anonymous hospice nurse, they captioned me. The book went into a seventh printing. A hospice foundation asked me to be the keynote speaker at their annual national gala in Phoenix, my own city, in November. Black tie, 800 people. They were giving me an award for, of all things, contribution to compassionate care. I told no one in my family. Why would I? They didn't ask about my work. They'd long since stopped seeing it as work at all. I told one person, my friend Priya, a palliative care doctor I'd worked beside for years who knew the whole story. When I told her about the keynote, she screamed in the middle of a Target and hugged me so hard a stock boy asked if we needed help. So that's where I was, 2 weeks out from being uninvited to my mother's birthday for the crime of being sad in public, and also 2 weeks out from standing in front of 800 people to accept a national award none of my family knew existed. And then the universe did a thing where it folds in on itself. Bernadette called me back 4 days later. I assumed it was guilt. It wasn't. Okay, so don't be weird about this, she said, which is how she opens every conversation in which she's about to be weird. Mom's party. I moved it. Logistics. Nightmare. The country club double booked. Ugh, don't get me started. So I found this incredible venue. Last minute miracle. It's the ballroom at the Arcadian Hotel downtown. They had a cancellation. It's gorgeous, Tess. You should see the chandeliers. My stomach did something cold and slow. That's great, I said. It's the same night, the 22nd, but a little earlier now, 6 o'clock. Anyway, I just wanted you to hear it from me in case you saw something online. We love you. It's just going to be a small, special thing. I want you to understand the geography of what she just told me. The Hospice Foundation, gala, my keynote, my award was at the Arcadian Hotel. in the grand ballroom on the 22nd of November at 7 o'clock. My mother's 60th birthday party, the one I'd been told would have its mood ruined by my presence, was booked into a function room down the hall from the biggest night of my life. Same building, same evening. They'd be drinking champagne 40 feet from the ballroom where I'd be standing at a podium. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I didn't cry. I laughed. It came out of me like something breaking loose. I could have told her. That would have been the gracious thing, the mature thing. I could have said, Bernie, funny story. But I thought about 10 years of, how's the hospital? I thought about a fruit basket. I thought about being told my grief was a logistics problem. I thought about my husband's key still sitting in the dish by my door because I'm the kind of person who sits with things instead of throwing them away. And I decided I wasn't going to manage their feelings for them anymore. Sounds beautiful, I said. Tell Mom I love her. The night of the 22nd, I got to the Arcadian at 5:30. I wore a deep green dress, the only formal thing I owned, bought for a wedding. Daniel and I never got to attend because he got sick. I'd never had the heart to return it. It fit me better now than it had then. Grief takes weight off you whether you ask it to or not. The valet took my car. I walked into the lobby, marble, gold, those chandeliers Bernie was so proud of, and the foundation had a table set up with my book stacked in a pyramid, my pen name on a placard. People were already milling. A woman from the foundation, Priya's contact, found me and pinned a name tag to my dress that just said Guest of Hon or, because they were still protecting my anonymity until the moment I walked on stage. And then, across the lobby, I saw them. My mother in lavender, her hair done, looking happy in that lit-up way she only ever looked at things Bernadette built for her. Bernadette in white, of course, gesturing at a server. Grant on his phone. The kids in little blazers, a cluster of my mother's church friends. They were funneling toward the function room down the hall, the one with a small sign on an easel, Habby 60th. They didn't see me. Why would they look? I wasn't supposed to exist tonight. I went the other direction into the ballroom and I found my seat at the head table and I breathed. The dinner was lovely. I barely tasted it. Priya sat beside me and held my hand under the table because she knew what was 40 feet away. At 7:15, the foundation's director took the stage. She talked about the year, the work, the family served, and then she said, "Tonight we honor someone whose words have reached so many people in their darkest hours. For 3 years, she wrote anonymously. Tonight, for the first time, she's agreed to step into the light." She said my pen name. Then she said, "But her real name is Tessa Brennan. She's a hospice nurse right here in Phoenix, and she has spent her career and her grief teaching the rest of us how to show up for the people we're about to lose." The room stood up, 800 people on their feet applauding, and the sound of it hit me like a wave I'd been bracing against for 14 months. I stood. My legs didn't feel like mine. Priya squeezed my hand and let go, and I walked to the stage. Here's the part the universe wrote, not me. The ballroom had a second set of doors at the back that opened onto the same hallway as the function room, and at some point during dinner, the catering staff had propped them open to move trays. So the applause, 800 people roaring, a standing ovation that went on and on, rolled down that hallway and into a small birthday party where a string trio had just stopped playing. I found out later from Priya, who heard it from a server, what happened next. My mother asked what the noise was. A waiter said, "Oh, that's the hospice gala. They're honoring some author. A nurse, I think. Local. There's a whole thing about her. She wrote a famous book about dying. Her name's everywhere tonight." And Bernadette, who has a phone surgically attached to her hand, who curates experiences, who knew the venue inside and out, Bernadette pulled up the event, found the program, found the program, found the honoree, found my name. I didn't know any of that yet. I was on stage. The lights were hot. I'd written the speech and I didn't use a word of it. I looked out at all those people, strangers, every one of them, and I thought about how not a single member of my family was in that room, and how that was the truest thing about my whole life. And I just started talking. I told them about the woman I'd sung to that Tuesday because no one else would. I told them about Daniel by name for the first time in public, my husband, the chemistry teacher with the crooked glasses, and how I'd nursed him to the end, and how everything I knew about dying I'd had to use on the person I loved most. I told them that the book wasn't about death. It was about attention, about the radical act of actually seeing a person before they're gone instead of after. I said that the cruelest thing you can do to someone is decide who they are and stop looking. And the kindest thing is to keep asking, keep showing up, keeping curious about a person right up until the last good hour. I didn't say it to my family. I didn't know they could hear. But the doors were open and grief carries, and apparently every word of it traveled down that hallway. When I came off stage, my phone was in my clutch and it was buzzing. A text from my mother, Tessa, is this you? Call me. A text from Bernadette, we had no idea. Are you here? 3 more after that. I turned the phone face down. The reception spilled into the lobby afterward. I was signing books, of all things, my own book, with a line of strangers telling me about their fathers, their wives, the hospice nurse who'd sat with their daughter. And that's where my family found me. They came around the corner all at once. My mother first, her face doing something I'd never seen it do. Open, undone, almost frightened. Bernadette behind her, for once with nothing curated to say. Grant trailing, holding the kids back like he knew this wasn't for them. Tessa, my mother said. We didn't know. I know you didn't, I said. This whole thing, this is you, the book? People are saying the woman from the foundation said you've sold? She stopped. She actually couldn't finish the sentence. Why didn't you tell us? And I looked at her, my mother, 60 years old as of tonight, in her lavender dress, with her hair done for a party I wasn't allowed to attend, and I felt the thing I'd been carrying for 14 months, for 10 years, longer. Just go quiet. I did tell you, I said. I've been telling you for 10 years. Every Sunday I told you what I do. You asked me how the hospital was. You never once asked me what it was like to sit with someone while they died. Not once. I do the hardest thing a person can do, Mom. I've done it hundreds of times. I did it for my own husband. And you decided a long time ago that it was sad and small, and you stopped looking. The line of strangers near us had gone quiet. I didn't care. Bernadette stepped forward. Tess, the party thing. I am so that was oh. My God, I uninvited you to celebrate Mom while you were? She gestured helplessly at the banner behind me, the stacks of my book. While this was happening to you. This didn't happen to me, I said. I built it. At 2 in the morning, by myself. After holding strangers' hands all day and coming home to an empty house. Nobody handed me this, Bernie. You'd know that if you'd ever asked what I was doing with my nights. My mother was crying now, not the pretty funeral crying, the other kind. I told myself I wanted you to have an easier life, she said. I pushed you toward I don't even know what, something that looked good. And you went and did the most important work there is, and I called it the hospital. She pressed her hand to her mouth. I uninvited you because I said you'd bring the mood down. My daughter who sits with dying people so they're not alone. I said you'd bring the mood down. You did, I said, not cruel, just true. A woman in line, a stranger, an older woman with a cane, touched my mother's arm. Your daughter sat with my husband, she said. Last March, she sang to him. I'll never forget her as long as I live. My mother looked at the stranger and then at me, and I watched something rearrange itself behind her eyes. The realization that people she'd never met knew a version of her daughter she'd refused to see. I let the silence do the work. It always does. I have to finish signing these, I said. There are people waiting. I didn't go to dinner with them after, my mother asked. Bernadette offered to completely redo the seating for the party still going on down the hall, like a chair was the thing I'd been missing. I said no. I said it gently because I'm not in the business of being cruel. I've spent too much time at the actual end of things to waste my life there. But I said no. I drove home that night with the award in the passenger seat where Daniel used to sit. And I talked to him a little, the way I still do, and I told him we did it. We did the thing. The email started the next morning. My mother's came first, and she didn't sign it the way she always did. Mom, with a little heart she'd learned to make on her phone, she wrote 3 paragraphs and signed it just, Your Mother, like she was reintroducing herself. She said she'd ordered my book. She said she'd read it on the plane to visit Bernadette, and she'd had to stop in the airport bathroom because she was crying so hard she couldn't see the page. She said, I have spent your whole life telling people I have a daughter who's a nurse, like it was the least interesting thing about you. I'm so ashamed I can hardly write this. You are the most interesting person I know. I just never let myself look. Bernadette's came an hour later, shorter. I will never forgive myself for that phone call. I don't expect you to forgive me yet either. But I'd like to learn who you actually are if you'll let me. Starting now? I didn't answer right away. I'm not somebody who rushes the hard hours. I let them sit for a few days. When I did write back, I kept it simple. I told them I wasn't angry anymore, that anger takes more energy than I have to spare, and I'd seen too many people die with their fists clenched around old grudges to want that for myself. But I told them things had to be different. I said, if you want me somewhere, ask me yourself. 2 weeks ahead and mean it. If you want to know about my work, ask because you care, not to be polite. And I told them I wasn't going to make myself smaller or sadder when convenient or invisible so that everyone else could feel comfortable. I'd done that for 32 years and I was finished. My mother wrote back one line, Tell me about your work. I'm asking because I care. Start anywhere. So I did. I wrote her a long email about a man I'd sat with that week, no names, who'd spent his last lucid afternoon teaching me his grandmother's recipe for cornbread because he wanted somebody to carry it forward. I wrote it the way I write everything, in the dark, at 2 in the morning, except this time I was writing it to my mother. She wrote back the next day and she'd made the cornbread. She sent a photo. It was lopsided and a little burnt, and it was the best thing she'd ever sent me. It's not fixed. I want to be honest about that, because I've spent my career in rooms where people lie about how fine everything is, and I won't do it here. Bernadette and I are careful with each other now, polite in the way of people rebuilding a bridge over a real river. My mother still slips sometimes, still measures things by what they look like before she catches herself. The years don't undo in a season. But she asks now. That's the thing. She asks and she waits for the answer and she lets it be longer than she's comfortable with. My 60th birthday party mother, who once told me my grief would ruin the mood, now calls me on Tuesday nights, not Sundays. Tuesdays, like she's trying to make a new day mean something, and says, Tell me about somebody you sat with this week. And I do. I used to think I was a person things happened to, the one you protected the party from, the sad one, the small one, the daughter you described last and quietest. Turns out I was building something the whole time in the hours nobody was watching out of the one thing my family was sure made me unbearable to be around, my grief, my nearness to death. The thing they wanted kept out of the ballroom. They wanted me out because they thought I'd bring the mood down. Now, my mother keeps a copy of my book on her nightstand, and she tells the women at church that her daughter teaches people how to stay with each other until the very end. She says it first now, before the boat, before the renovation, before any of it. She says it like it's the most interesting thing about our whole family. Because it is. The night I drove home with that award sitting in Daniel's old seat, I kept thinking about the difference between being seen and being looked at. My family had looked at me for 32 years. They just never once chose to actually see me. And the strange, hard truth is that I let them get away with it for a long time. Because correcting people is exhausting and grief had already taken everything I had. What changed wasn't luck. People want to believe it was luck, that the universe just happened to book Mom's party down the hall from my gala. But the gala was mine because of 3 years of 2 in the morning work nobody asked about. The book existed because I refused to let my pain make me useless. That's the part I want you to hear. When Bernadette called my grief a problem to be managed, she was telling me who she was. When I said, I understand, and hung up instead of begging, I was deciding who I'd be. Those two choices set everything that followed in motion. I learned something sitting with the dying that I'd put off learning about my own life. The people who go peacefully are almost never the ones who are richest or most admired. They're the ones who stopped performing. The ones who did honest work and loved on purpose and stopped waiting for permission to matter. I'd been giving everyone else that lesson and skipping it myself. So here's what I'd say to you. If you're the one in your family who gets described last and quietest, do the right thing even when no one claps, because character built in private holds up in public. Pay attention to people while you still can, because the cruelest thing you can do to anyone is decide who they are and stop being curious. And keep going in the dark hours, the ones nobody sees, because that's where the real thing gets built, never on the stage, always in the silence before it. I didn't get my family back by winning. Winning just made them look up. I got them back by being clear about what I'd accept, by refusing to shrink, and by choosing not to drag old anger around like a suitcase I was too tired to carry. Forgiveness, the real kind, isn't pretending it didn't happen. It's deciding it won't keep happening and then letting the rest go. My mother makes lopsided cornbread now and sends me photos. Bernadette and I are careful, but we're trying. None of it is perfect. I sat beside enough deathbeds to know perfect was never the assignment. The assignment was simple, and I almost missed it. Be the kind of person who shows up. Build something true with the time you've got. And don't you dare wait for a standing ovation to believe you were worth the room all along.